Hey there, today's Monday, February 6th, 2023. The record button for the class today I didn't push it apparently. So I didn't have a recording for seminary today, so I want to make this really quick synopsis for those that missed it. So the journal question for today was social acceptance is important, right? So what do I do when gospel living causes social problems for me? Think about that and do some self-discovery there. How do you handle it when it costs you socially to live the gospel? And is that a problem? Like, isn't it good to be socially accepted? Doesn't God want that in some ways? Otherwise, how do we make a difference in other people's lives if we don't have some kinds of connections with people? So think about that a little bit. We had a good opening. We listened to a hymn about freedom in America, and the share that Chase did was on how much he values freedom and agency, and he kind of just reviewed his version of the plan of salvation was essentially that we get to come here and have agency and choose, and all those choices have consequences, good or bad, and that we get to learn from our choices and experiences, and because of Jesus Christ, we're allowed to have redos, and that we can change. And I thought that was a really great synopsis of the plan of salvation. So we discussed that for a little bit, the reality of how all choices have results. Consequences we think of maybe as a negative word, but the better word is results or impact or ripple effect. Every thought, word, and deed, every intention has some kind of an impact or result, for better or worse. So fortunately, we get the opportunity to learn from our experiences, and that's because of Jesus Christ. Whether or not we accept Christ, we still benefit from his atonement because we all do experience change and growth. And without Christ, that wouldn't be possible at all, because we would just get stuck with the burdens of the past mistakes and sins. Just would pile up and they wouldn't go away. The spiritual impact of those wouldn't be able to be redeemed. Let's see, good thought for today. That was on the board from Ivy. You know what you can't retake if you bomb it? Life. Focus up. And she's quoting Will Averitt. So thanks for the cameo appearance there, Will. Still making a difference even though you're in South America. Let's see. I'm looking at a photo, essentially. Let me just show you what I'm looking at. It's like I take a picture of the board at the end of the day, and so I'm reminding myself of what we covered today to be able to share with you. There was a Doctrinal Mastery scripture shared, John 3:5. Don't know if you know what that is from memory, but it's the scripture about how baptism is essential to enter the kingdom of heaven. And so we didn't spend too much time on that. Just want to memorize it. Basket questions we did at the beginning of the class. Actually, we spent some time talking about the seating arrangement, whether or not, like the pros and cons of having everybody in the round, kind of in one row, big circle around the room, or whether kids like to have kind of two rows, and whether or not they get to choose where they sit, or whether that their name card is set out for them. I wonder what you think about that. What are the pros and cons to each of those? But we took a vote, and it was fairly well split, but there were a couple of more kids on the side of let's choose where we sit and let's have rows instead of just one big circle. But then we kind of decided it's good to switch it up. Everybody agreed variety is good. Let's see. We did some basket questions. There were a couple of silly questions asked, but then a couple of pretty more serious ones. One of them was, why did we cancel polygamy? And that got a couple of laughs. So we did talk a little bit about kind of the fears associated with polygamy and how it's kind of hard to understand a little bit and maybe misunderstood a lot. But we kind of focused on like who canceled polygamy. Was it because of political pressure, social pressure? What was the reason why it ended? And we decided that the better question is not why did we cancel polygamy, but why did God discontinue polygamy? And we kind of reviewed how, well, we don't know the mind and will of God all the time. God is bigger than us. He knows more than us. He's doing things among us that we don't fully understand. And that's not to say we shouldn't go searching. We should go searching. We should understand everything we can about the church and God's dealings with his people, including polygamy in church history. Definitely make it a research project if it's something that you have concerns about or questions about. Don't just assume we can't understand things, but also appreciate that we don't know everything God is up to. We can only know what he's told us about what he's up to, and that's what we should research. We should also research the experiences of those who actually were involved in polygamy directly. What did they think about it? Was it positive? Was it negative? How did they feel spiritually about that law or that commandment that was enacted at that time? But what we do know is that God acts in love for the best interest and for the salvation of all of his children. Whether or not polygamy is a reality in heaven and it will be something that it is introduced again later, or something that we'll never have to think about again, or something that you get to choose to do. We just don't really know much about that in the life after this one. What we do know is that God's people have practiced plural marriage more than once on the earth. So it's somehow something that he has condoned and even commanded at times. And he has his own reasons for doing that. What the safety is found in sticking with the brethren. The united voice of the brethren won't lead us astray. Let's see. Another question was how to help a friend who uses, well, it was a longer question than this. Basically, somebody said, I have a friend who's depressed, and to deal with it, they're turning to vaping and drinking or smoking and stealing. And it makes this person sad, and they want to know what they can do to help them. And students had some really good input, some great ideas. First one offered by Holly was that you can show them that there's a better way to live, and that better way makes you more happy, and it keeps you out of trouble. So being a good example, without using words, showing them that, well, they don't need to do that to be able to deal with the problems that they have in their life. Some other kids shared some experiences in class that they've had with kids in bathrooms who've been vaping, and just some ideas about how to help that friend. I think another one was essentially, well, all addiction is an inappropriate response to human suffering, not handling it the right way. So telling people, using your words to talk about how there is a better way, actually inviting people to do something differently. Using mature words in your relationship, like I care about you, and I'm worried about you, I'm concerned about your health, I don't think what you're doing is good for you, and it makes me sad to see you hurting yourself. Those kinds of words can actually be very powerful, and inviting them to make a change. One student said, ask questions to help them try to understand why they're doing what they're doing, which was, why do you vape? How do you think that's helping you? How do you think it's hurting you? And I thought that was a really good idea. So don't be afraid to speak up and to express your concern and to offer and invite a better way for friends who are struggling with word of wisdom, law of chastity, or other choices that could lead them to physical and mental and spiritual destruction. Let's see. Then we got back a little bit into the New Testament, Luke 2. So we got back to the story of Jesus at age 12 in the temple, and we had almost no time to discuss it again, so we just read a few verses, and I'll just read them to you here. It's in Luke 2, 48 through 51. And when they saw him, they were amazed. Now, this is talking about, if you'll remember, I guess we should back up a little bit. Jesus was 12. They were in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, which was an annual pilgrimage that the family probably made. They would make it with friends and family along the long trek from Nazareth to Jerusalem, and something where people would need to stick together, right? You don't go walking on that road by yourself. So they had traveled a day's journey after Passover back toward Nazareth, thinking that Jesus was with them. And they realized after a day's journey that he wasn't with them, and it freaked him out. So they spent another day traveling back to Jerusalem. Maybe it didn't take him a day, although the scripture says a day there, like 3 days, he was missing. And then they spent a day searching around and finally found him on the third day in the temple. And then it says here, and when they saw him, meaning his parents, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why were they amazed? Let's ask that question. And that's kind of what we focus on. What does it mean that they were amazed? And students offered in the class that they were amazed at his ability to hang with the scribes and Pharisees and the doctors of the law and of the religion of the day. He was actually teaching and being taught by them. They were astonished at his learning, but it says the parents were amazed. But they weren't necessarily there when he was doing all that, right? They had found him. And immediately the response, it would seem, from his mother was, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Why have you treated us this way? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. So they were upset. And I think the question we asked was, what do they mean by amazed? Some students suggested they were amazed that he was in the temple doing what he was doing. Other students said perhaps they were really frustrated and upset. So the amazement was more like, why and how could you do this to us? Because you have never done something like this. So that was a deeper amazement. Not that he was very knowledgeable. They would have already known that. But how is it possible that you have thus dealt with us? Why have you treated us this way? This isn't something we would expect of you. And that's as far as we got today. So maybe think about that and read the rest of those verses. And let's see what we can learn from Jesus' response and then their response to him. Let me look at these notes here. Was there anything else that we covered? I think that's it. That was like almost an hour's worth of stuff in, less than 15 minutes. Sorry you weren't there, and hopefully this has been a little bit helpful, giving you something to think about. Okay, see ya.